Welcome to Beauty as a Birthright, a podcast that explores awakening our six senses: touch, smell, sight, hearing, taste, and intuition through embodied Daoist practices. I'm Dr. Tamsin Lee, a Daoist metaphysical expert and founder of Elemental Archetypes, sharing face reading, Batsa astrology, and seasonal living.
And I'm Dr. Paige Yang, owner of an integrative health clinic in Honolulu and founder of Yang Face, a culturally appreciative Chinese facial tool brand. Join us on our personal journeys as we navigate the complexity of inner, outer, and relational beauty. We'll chat about how awakening our beauty through the six senses impacts our relationship to aging, childhood trauma, romantic relationships, motherhood, dating, careers, and so much more.
Let's awaken our senses and explore beauty as a birthright.
Okay, Tamsin.
Hello, hello. I don't know why I just said hello in that weird way.
Hello.
So
I think you're just coming off of this dragon year, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in a cuckoo state of mind because this is such a busy time for me this year. I don't know if it is for you, but it's just, I always feel like I need a vacation after Lunar New Year because it's so busy. And like for us as Asian business owners, like this is the busiest time. Like we can't do all the things that we're supposed to do, which is really just rest as we transition into the Lunar New Year. And so, yeah, you know, what are you going to do? We try our best.
So what are some, I loved our last episode and I think we published it during a time when people were pretty busy with the holidays. So I hope that those listening now, if you have the time to go back and listen to that one was so fun. And we did, of course, we talked about a bit about Dragon Year and then a bit about the upcoming Snake Year. But this time we're going to just go deeper and be a little bit more like intentional. So I just want to jump right in and kind of ask you the biggest lessons you learned in the Dragon Year and what you're taking from it. Want to start there? Do you know, like it's hard for us to think about all these answers when we have so much going on.
I feel like Dragon Year, I lived like 5 different lives this past year. It did not feel like 1 year. And now I look back and I'm like, did that really happen? Like all of that in 1 year? It just feels, I feel like a completely different person. And I can't believe all of that happened in 1 year. Or like who I was, especially during Dragon Month. I think Dragon Month was the biggest like transition for me. And the main thing is what I've been working really is to understand how my intuition speaks through me and what that sounds like and what that feels like. I think that's very dragon-like. And this past year, I did this like session with the VIP dragon members of Guardians of Destiny, and that has a lot to do with your intuition. But I also did a Hungry Ghost workshop, which also kind of sounds like intuition. So lately, I've been thinking about like what is the difference? And for Hungry Ghosts, it's that intuitive like feeling or sound, it comes from a fear base because that's what they are. So it always sounds like, oh, don't do that. Don't do that. You're going to fail. Right. Whereas Guardian of Destiny, it's another intuitive energy. It always sounds more quiet and like subtle. So it's more like, don't go down that street, whereas the Hungry Ghost is like, don't go down that street. And I think that maybe for me as like a trauma survivor, I listen to the fear more. It's louder, so it's easier for me to listen to. Where intuition, it's like, it's so even keel. It's so, it's just like a whisper, not even, or just like it's as if it's just talking in a normal tone. And I think that has been the biggest lesson to differentiate this type of intuitive messages that I'm getting. And I think that's going to carry over for Snake Year.
Okay. Well, I have a question about what you said with the louder voice versus the quieter voice, and then being a trauma survivor.
Yes, Dr.
So does
Page. I feel
that
like we're in therapy session.
so does that mean that when someone's yelling something at you, you receive that and hear it more than if someone were to calmly approach you and say the same thing?
Maybe. Like, we're in the ox month, so I've been really focused on workouts and doing practical things to set the
Mm-hmm.
foundation, right? And I've been exploring different types of workout. I've been sharing that on Instagram. And I said one of my favorite things about workouts or workout classes is when the instructor is yelling at me. Like, I respond well to that. When an instructor is like, um, if they're just too chill, I'm not gonna respond to that. I want them to like yell and be like, "Get it, duh!" Like 45 minutes, let's go, push hard, and it does something to me. And so I think maybe that's the same case, like in real life. Like, isn't that always the case though? Like the loudest one gets the attention. Like even on Instagram, right? Like you get all this love, and then there's that one troll, and you just can't stop thinking about them.
Well, you know what? Interesting, and why I had asked you about that is with my childhood trauma, when I'm yelled at, I completely shut down and I can't hear what they're saying. I go into a
Oh,
freeze state. And if instead I were to just be like quietly spoken to slowly and kindly, I would like immediately relax and hear and receive the message. And so I try to do that to others, but I don't know if like others don't hear me and they want me to speak up more instead.
that
They're like,
sounds
"What?
nice.
What?"
That sounds nice. Like as you
Yeah.
was describing that, like I can feel my body just
Relaxing.
yeah. But if we were
Yeah.
like at a cafe hanging out, right? And you wanted to tell me something important, and if you said this in this even, my mind would be like, okay, okay, yeah. Do you want to get a cappuccino now? Like I would not, I probably wouldn't register it that you were being
Right.
serious, right?
Right.
I think you would have to maybe not yell at me, but at least like elevated tone. I don't know. Like I actually,
Yeah.
it's something I have to think about.
That's like a really see, this is really interesting mirroring for me because I realize when I share really intense, heavy news with people, I do it so calmly and collectively and sweetly that they get very confused about the news. They'll be like, "Wait, what? How do you feel about this? This is crazy. Oh my gosh. Like, are you okay?" kind of thing. And I think that they like ramp up their response because they're very confused why it wasn't delivered in a way that matched like the context and the content of it.
Yes, I've experienced that with you
Yeah.
before. You just described it. I didn't know that's what I was experiencing. But I wasn't confused. I was like, whoa, Paige really has her shit together. But maybe internally, a lot of things were going on. It's just that's how you express it.
Yeah. Mhm.
Interesting. So then, how does fear, like, what does fear sound like to you? So, like, what do your hungry ghosts sound like to you?
Mhm. Mhm. I think it's more like obsessive, naggy, yeah, like repetitive, but quiet. They're but it's just like
Mm.
continuously there. Instead of making these like loud cameos, it's just like this persistence, but like of the it's like water dripping on the forehead where it's just like this gentle tapping, 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 but it doesn't stop. And then you're like, oh my God, this is torture. It's more like that than someone like punching me in the face. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Wow, this is so
Yeah.
interesting. I never thought of it that it would
Hmm.
play out differently like that. Now I got to reassess all
Yeah.
this later. That's so,
Yeah.
wow.
Well, but I also want to hear how you feel like you either like embodied characteristics of the dragon, or like what you learned the most from this past year from the dragon? Like, what you're taking
Yeah.
with you?
I'll tell you a little story. Like a few years ago, I was talking to a friend who later betrayed me, and it was like the first,
Mm.
not the first type of betrayal from a friend, but I haven't had many. Like before then, I had maybe one before, And so, and she is a CPTSD survivor. And she had just gone through this major trauma. And she told me, she was like, I don't think I have it in me anymore to go through one more traumatic thing. I just don't have it. I'll give up. And when she said that, I was like, oh, I feel different. I feel like I have it in me. But this year, I didn't know the depth of what trauma could feel like. Like you think like as trauma survivors, you're like, wow, I've gone through so much. And then something else happens. You're like, didn't think that was possible. And
Right.
I tell people Dragon Year is the year where all of my nightmares came true. I swear.
Wow.
And what I learned from this, not that I can get through this, but like that I need to really give myself credit that I have the strength to get through what life throws at me.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I need to honor that strength. And I need to understand that that is very unique to me, that not
Mhm.
everybody has that. And I have to really truly honor it because it's the very thing that's kept me alive. And I have to like think that it's incredibly sacred. And I think that's the
Yeah.
dragon ego pride thing that I'm understanding, that I really have to. It's very different than tiger, because tiger has pride and ego too, and I learned a lot
Mhm.
during my class year for that. But it was
Mhm.
more it was more like internal pride and ego. Like inside you feel good about yourself, right? But
Right.
dragon is like inside I feel good about myself, and then I'm going to show you how good I am.
Mhm.
And I think that's the thing that I'm trying to become more comfortable with, or just show it off more. Because somewhere down in my life I was told you can't do that, because I wasn't like that as a kid.
Mhm.
I remember. And so,
Mm.
or, I was told like, you can't be so egotistical, or well, it's such a fine line of being too egotistical and then having so much self-confidence that you show it. You know what
Right.
I mean? Like, I feel like in society, especially for people who are marginalized, like you can't show the world how beautiful you are, how confident you are, how smart you are. You always have to play yourself down. Yet at the same time, you have to show up 100 times more than
Mhm. Right.
the average white dude.
Right.
I think that it makes you insane. Like you got to show up 100 times more, but you got to appear 50 times less.
Mhm. Yeah, there's a real art to that. But something that you were saying about the dragon year for you, the word that came to mind was transcendence, where it seems like, the dragon, I kind of laugh when I think of like all those 12 zodiac animals. And even though the dragon doesn't show up last, but just thinking of like the other 11 animals and maybe the emperor, whoever, like in total admiration of these beautiful animals. And the tiger comes, and of course, it's like, whoa. And then like the dragon just shows up, and they're just like, what up? And I can just see like the people or the emperor being like, oh my god, this is an actual creature of this earth, because that's what I believe. And just that like transcends all of the other animals. It just completely, because it has this quality to it that's on a completely different plane, dimension, realm than any of the other animals. And that in itself already makes it Yeah, it just has to transcend all of the other animals' powers, lures, whatever, what ego, all those things. And it seems like that's what you experience while working through this dragon year's trauma and everything that it presented to you, and what you said, like your worst, like your nightmares happening. It's like you almost had to, and you did, transcend.
I still need to work on like showing it and like really honoring it. And I think I said,
Hmm.
it's not just me. It's like, I think everyone should do that. Like, if you think about how much you've gone through life, why shouldn't you show it off? Why shouldn't you,
Right.
you know? And if that intimidates other people, or other people are think you're being too much or whatever, that's none of your problem. That's not your problem. It's
Hmm.
because I actually love when people show up like in their full self, confident,
Yeah.
gorgeous, and unapologetic about who they are. It's
Hmm.
it's mesmerizing to me. And and there are typically, I think it's a fine line, because those people, the true ones, are very warm people too. They don't look down on anybody, and
Hmm.
they're really inviting. And I find that even more enticing. And but I feel like I've met too many people in my life where it's such a strange thing, because they've said like they feel intimidated by me. And I find that so strange,
Mm.
because I always try to dim myself to make other people feel
Mm.
comfortable.
Right. Wow. So just imagine when you're in your full power, you're getting there,
Yeah, I'm not going to care about
but
no one.
yeah.
Well,
But I
Paige,
think that, yeah.
well, yeah, you go, and then let me ask you a personal question.
No, I was going to say that I think by doing that, though, you could influence people. It could turn from intimidation to influence,
With my
where
work
people
life,
feel, yeah.
it's very different, I think. How I show up at work and how I show up on Instagram is very different than how I show up with my friends. Um,
Mm.
but even in work, like I had one male student complain to the dean that he was too intimidated by my career. And, to me in work, I'm like, I don't care. Yeah, you should be intimidated. What
Yeah.
I've done in my career is very unique to what goes on in my professional field. But I don't want to feel
Right.
like that with friends. And so it's different in my personal life.
Hmm.
Yeah. So my question was like, when you met me, were you intimidated by me?
um, I don't think so. I thought that, like, there's always, I'm so far away. I'm in Hawaii. And so
Yeah.
we always have this stereotype of East Coast people, New Yorkers. And even though you're out west now, I know you grew up out east. And I just remember like our first two interactions, I thought like, oh, this is like what it is to be a New Yorker.
I
This is
love
what they
that.
talk about. I'm like, I kind of thought like really silly things, like you had like a, not a, like a bad mouth, but like an East Coast mouth. Like, wow, they can just say stuff. And but I don't think I was intimidated. Yeah. It was more just that, like being really intrigued by what I thought was fulfilling this idea of a New Yorker, and
Oh,
that
wow.
fierceness and like street smarts and some grit and a little bit of like foul language, like something like that. So that
Yeah.
is like a totally different energy than, where I live, where I grew up.
And that's the thing in my
But
personal life, that's the thing that intimidates people, is because I'm from New York,
mm,
and they find that
hmm,
intimidating because I've had
yeah,
experiences. But my experiences aren't unique, not unique to me. It's like you talk to any kid who grew up in New York, it's pretty similar. It's just New York is this incredible city. And so we get to
Right.
experience different things. But that's the thing. One of the things that people have told me is that I come off very elitist because of that.
Mm. Well, I will say people that grew up in New York, they had access to the best of everything in the States. So it's like the best Chinese food outside of Asia in New York, the best like pizza outside of Europe, all in New York. So it just is like the best of anything where you don't have to get on a plane and go to the actual source, I feel like lives in New York. And for that reason, there is this privilege that comes with growing up there and being exposed to these things at your fingertips. Like my
Yeah.
friends from New York, I remember because Hawaii is mostly, a Pan Asian culture. And I remember even my Caucasian friends from New York in college, they could totally hang with what I would talk about when I talk about the food and the dishes because they grew up eating it and like eating the authentic style of it, not like the Panda Express of it.
Right.
And I just remember like being so impressed. I was like, oh
Yeah.
my God, well, like even like Korean barbecue, like they would be down for all these things that I thought were so unique to Hawaii. And they could totally hang, like, or knowing what to order because they would, eat this maybe once a week back home or whatever. And that just like always blew my mind about New Yorkers.
Yeah. We have the best food because it's so diverse.
Yeah.
And I think it's like it's not no big deal for you to be, you know, eating like Chinese food one day and then eating Afghani
hmm
food literally the same day, but for dinner.
Yep.
And it's not a big deal.
Yep. And it's like super authentic and it's good.
But it
Like
goes
the
to
owners are from those places, like
right.
etc. Yeah.
I was a little intimidated by you when I first met you. By little, I mean a
I was
lot.
Oh, it's so interesting. Yeah, tell me more if you want to.
But it was that intimidation that like kind of turns me on, you know? Like I think intimidation like is such an aphrodisiac for me in certain ways, in some ways.
Mhm.
I just remember like I thought you were so smart and put together and beautiful. Like so all of this
Oh.
together was like, whoa, I got to be on my best behavior. I love how like I love how you like your perception of me was like this foul mouth and I was like trying to be a really
Yeah.
good person.
This is like a raunchy New Yorker.
That was me on my best behavior.
Oh my
Um
gosh.
and I couldn't read you very well too. I think that was the
Mm.
other thing. But then when I found out you're a tiger,
Mhm.
I'm like, oh, this is where it's coming from. Uh
Mhm.
and and it's but I love that intimidation. I don't know. Like I like that in people. I love that in my friends. I want to be a little
Mhm.
bit intimidated by them. I want my friends to like be of a certain level, you know? And that
Yeah.
intimidation is like, it doesn't make me scared or run away or make me think less of myself. I never feel like envious or jealous. I feel like, oh,
Mhm.
cool. Like this person likes me, wants to be friends with me. Cool.
Well, what do you think that says about you that you like that you're drawn to friends that you are initially or like have it are intimidated of?
Maybe intimidation is the wrong word. Maybe it's just confidence.
Mm. Or
And I
like
think
they leave an impression.
yeah. And I think I'm confident in what I can bring to the friendship, like, or
Mhm.
my special, unique traits or whatever. It's like I'm confident in that. But I don't know. There isn't a lot of things that intimidates me to the point of wanting to put somebody down or wanting them to dim their light. I
Yeah.
don't know if I've ever been really in a situation where I want that person, "Ooh, you're too much. Can you just be here? Can you be here? Can you dim
Mm.
your light
Mhm.
50%?" I
Mhm.
don't like if I don't know. I don't think I've ever felt that. And I'm not saying that I'm a really confident person, but yeah.
Yeah. I feel like you're very confident.
Aw, thanks.
But you have this lighthearted quality that comes off of, I feel like, being a monkey. Um, that you don't get too serious with you're confident, but there's this playfulness. And so I don't know, for me at least, that's why I don't think I felt intimidated by you, because there's this like really fun streak that is it pulls people in, definitely. But anyway, I think that sometimes that might not register to you as like being 100% confident, when really it's just like another facet of your personality is also having lots of fun, not being super serious all the time.
It's a very dragon theme because even dragons themselves, who have this like big pride and big ego, one of the biggest weaknesses for them is that their lack of confidence, despite all of this, despite that they're the
Mhm.
most magical creature, they really struggle with confidence because, I know they're real, Paige, but for the sake of the story, it's like because they're not technically a real animal. So it's like they'll never fit in. But once they figure out that they'll never fit in, then that's it. Like they fit in.
Mhm. Do you know, are there people in your life that are dragons or really have these similar qualities that you can think of that are close to you?
To me, my personality or
Like friendships or family members
I've met
that,
dragons.
yeah.
Like I've met I think
Mhm.
mostly dragon women, which is funny because I've met mostly snake men. So that I think that's
Mm.
interesting. And the dragon
So,
women I find really interesting.
yeah, what did you expect, and then what did you find?
They're very smart. Like and they're not just
Mhm.
smart. I don't know what the word is. It's like they can really they're very innovative. These are really bland words for what they can actually do. Like what they do with their life is incredible. Like it's things
Mhm.
that I'm like, whoa, like the top of the top, the best of the best, thinking of things that I can't even imagine. And I think I have a great imagination and I am innovative, but they're on a completely different level.
Mhm.
Um, but they are very insecure inside when you really get to know them.
Yeah.
And they can be quite judgmental of other people.
Mhm.
Um, they don't have a lot of patience. But these are also even like not having a lot of patience is the thing that drives them. They have
Mhm.
extremely high expectations for themselves in a
Right.
way that I can't even grasp. Like they're not just A+ students; they're like the top of the top or whatever that is. What
Mhm.
about you? Do you have a lot of experience with dragon people?
I kind of do through patience and through some of my friends' parents are dragons. It's really interesting because one of the first things on my mind was that they were deeply insecure. But
Interesting.
yeah, it's so interesting because it comes, if you don't have the ability to discern what's really at play there, it can come off as um like not inappropriately confident, but like confident in situations that don't match the, like it's like off. How do I explain this well? It's like they're confident in places that you don't need that kind of a confidence, but they bring like a type of confidence to a situation. And then you're like, oh, that's a little like not needed right now. But then underneath that, it's because there's this deep insecurity. And I always just find that interesting because in my head, yes, I also feel the same as you were. They're incredibly smart. The dragons I know are very beautiful. And I'm always wondering, like, why? Why are you so insecure? You're so smart. You're so this, you're so that. You have so much going for you. but like just now you were a little bit off in your confidence energy because underneath that was compensating for this insecurity. And I don't know if other people can like tap into that like I can in a social interaction, but that's something that I've always thought about with them. And I'm like, wow, this it's interesting.
They also live very bold lives. Like
Yes.
sometimes sometimes destructive onto them.
Mhm.
Like,
Mhm.
but they're not living like a meek, quiet life. Like when you learn about
Yep.
they may appear if they're older, like, oh, they're just like a normal person. But then you find out like, like all their past history of like being an international spy or something. I don't know. Like it's just so crazy. It's
Mhm.
like what, and they've lived like so many different lives, and
Yeah.
it,
But you know what's really cool? And actually this really reminds me of what you were saying earlier when it came to this dragon year for you, is they live all of those lives and somehow they can present like totally unbothered by it, which I know
yeah,
is like what we talked about with the snake, but it's and of course they share a lot in common with how they are, but I just yeah, it's like you'll hear about what they went through or like the different aspects of their lives, and you're like, wait, that's you too? You
yeah,
were those things? And this is the same person in front of me? That's and yeah, it's just fascinating. But anyway, I brought it back to what you shared with me because I felt like you had said something similar about just going through so much and time felt the year felt like 10 for you or whatever it may have felt like because so much got packed in such a short amount of time and so many versions of yourself had to show up and work through those certain situations. And then you're like, oh my God, that was wild. And I feel like that's a dragon's life, just, extrapolated out for all their years.
yeah.
And
For
then
us,
we
it
got
was
like a
one
crash
year.
course. Yeah.
I know. For
We
us, it
were
was
like,
one
this is
year.
what you do.
This
This
is
is
your
your
whole.
life every.
Yeah, exactly. Was that your experience
Oh.
too? Like that you've also experienced multiple lives this past year?
Yes. And I actually was just dreaming the other day about well, I don't know the correct term in psychology, if it's like dissociative personality disorder or something. Basically, people that can have multiple personalities leave their bodies and like live out a certain life or a certain scenario and have no recollection of it. Like they've blacked out, a part of their
Right.
consciousness blacked out. And it can be as like simple as, someone who sleepwalks and like eats a meal, interacts with people, goes back to bed and they don't remember. Or it can be as horrific as, of course, like a serial killer, or it can be someone who developed this mechanism if they suffered a ton of abuse as a child. And so to cope, they basically had to leave their bodies. Anyway, I thought about all of that because I thought about how this dragon year had a little bit of that energy. And not just for me personally, but it felt like for a lot of my patients where they were having to like be all of these different versions of themselves. And it was almost like they forgot that it was still them in this short amount of time. And it's like, oh,
Mm.
yeah, that's right. Like, I can, for myself, I can be like, oh, yeah, that's right. A part of me kind of like had a complete mental breakdown. And then I'm like, wait, that was me? And, and then I'm like, that's weird. And so it's just really interesting. And I think of the metamorphosis of the dragon and how it can appear and look so different, but then also this like reptilian quality that also moves into the snake, and how we've talked about how things are always so intentional in East Asian astrology, and the order is so intentional. So it makes sense that we go from this like creature who can fly and swim and all of these things to then like the wings, loses its hands and feet, and then it has to go to the ground, but it can still shed and transform. Like there had to have been a transition animal for something like a dragon. It couldn't just
Yeah.
go into like the rat or whatever, right? It's like it had to make sense. And that's how what I felt of that's how I feel about it.
Oh, I love that. That's such a beautiful explanation of like the
Mhm.
snake year. Um, yeah, I don't want to trash on the dragon because it's like they just I think they're incredible. It's just
Yeah.
it's almost like your strengths are your weaknesses are your strengths always. And
Mhm.
they still amaze me, dragon people. Like I'm always amazed at what they can do. And it's
Mhm.
something that I know I don't have that kind of magic, what they have. And
Yeah.
I'm not jealous of it. Like it's
Mhm.
maybe they are the ones where I'm just like, okay, it's a lot, but I never tell them dim down. I'll be like, I'm gonna take a step back. I'm gonna spend some time
Mhm.
alone by myself, and you keep doing what you need to do and dazzle everybody else. But
Yeah.
that confident piece is such a huge thing, and I think that's gonna carry over into Snake Year. And so many of my
Mhm.
clients also had very chaotic. Like I've been getting so many DMs from people. They're like, I am counting down the day until this year finally ends.
Uh-huh. You know, the other thought I had with when you're just talking about the dragon, and something that I have a hard time with, and in a previous episode you mentioned you had similarly have a hard time with, is in their realities, multiple truths can exist at once.
Yes.
And it's hard for me to follow that because in my head, I'm like, if this is true, how is that true? And for them, they're like, if this is true, of course, this can also be true. And I'm like, what? And
Right.
it's so, that is also interesting. But I think that that was a great thing for me to learn from this dragon year because it really expanded my consciousness and challenged me to see beyond, this like really strict, straight Virgo way of thinking and feeling safe, and challenging myself to be like, this can exist and this can exist. Both of these things can be true at the same time, and you can still be safe if these all exist at once. And that was something before that I felt like I almost limited my life or my decisions or my perspective to like really straightforward thinking because it made me feel safe, but then I wasn't like getting the full depth and richness that life has to offer. For those reasons, I feel like, so appreciative of the dragon year, and how the dragons influence myself and their community, their friends, their family. So
I love that you added that last part. And I feel
yeah.
safe because I don't think people
Hmm.
associate why certain people can't handle multiple truths because it's that
Yeah.
safety piece that's missing. Like I don't even think I
Right.
realized it until you just said it. And
Hmm.
it's not only like this can be true and that can be true, but guess what? Five other things can be true all at the same time. It's like
Yeah.
it seems chaotic, but the way that you described it, it's like it's richness, not chaos.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or chaos
Yep.
can be
Exactly.
richness, you know?
Hmm. Yeah. Well, that's it for today. If you like this episode, please share it with a friend and give us a review to let us know how you've been navigating your beauty journey. You can also follow us on Instagram at Beauty Birthright Pod and say hello.
To learn more about face reading, Batsa astrology, and seasonal living, head over to elementalarchetypes.com and follow me at Elemental Archetypes.
And to explore beauty through your own hands, visit yangface.com and follow at yang.face for tutorials, Chinese medicine theory, and candid thoughts on cultural appreciation.